So we're back. I'm not sure if there's something strange with sharing this on Facebook. So if you happen to be on Facebook, can you see, those of you in Zoom, if you can see this video being live streamed on my Facebook? There seems to be some, recently Zoom and Facebook, there's some changes, and so not so much for this even, but for kind of future programs that we do, I'm trying to figure out if it is actually streaming or not streaming. Somehow the streaming seems to be kept private, even though I've changed the streaming to public. But anyway, if you can go take a look, and if you can see it, you know, say something, leave a comment or something like that, then maybe other people can see it. It's a little, not sure what's going on. Can see, good. Kim already. So anyway, as I was saying, as we all know, we started this series, the study of Gongchik, more than a year ago at the start of the pandemic. The very first video, I asked Omar, who has been diligently putting these videos on the Dharma Kirti YouTube channel. So again, if someone can put that on the Facebook, for people on Facebook who may not be familiar with that particular playlist, if Omar, you can share that, that'd be great. The first recording was on April 3rd, 2020, and that was posted on our YouTube channel. And including today's class, a total of 123 classes. So together with, depending on 20, 25, sometimes 30 even at the beginning of it when people were still excited. But at the very least, I think each class we had 20 of you. So definitely I want to thank the 20 or so of you that have stuck with this all the way through. This is really important. I'm not making this up. I'm not being humble. But nobody can teach into just empty space. So without the 20 of you kind of feeding me, so to say, this definitely will not come to this point of 123 of these teachings. Of course, you know, there's also probably, being that it's samsara and knowing my limits, there are 123 videos, so there is at least 123 mistakes that have to be remedied and purified. So until we are Buddhas, you know, our actions and the effects of our actions will be mixed results, you know. And as Kyoba Rinpoche's Vajra statements made clear, you know, yes, the results are mixed, but not mixed in the sense of being confused. The virtuous results will manifest in virtuous ways. The non-virtuous results will manifest in non-virtuous ways. Then the good news about non-virtue is that the one, often it is said, the one virtue of non-virtue is that non-virtue can be purified. Just as virtue can be destroyed, as Shantideva warns us. Virtue seeds that have been planted, if they have not ripened yet, could be destroyed by, say, excessive anger and so on and so forth. Hate that can burn off. So the one virtue, it is said, of non-virtue, of negative karma, is that it can be purified. So I hope you all will help and work on this purification. One moment. The computer was running out of battery. Maybe the computer said, okay, enough, 120 recording. You should end now. Then in terms of personally, who I should mention in terms of my access and ability to know a little bit about this precious set of teachings of Gongchik. First and foremost, then, it would be Gongchik Rinpoche. I first met Gongchik Rinpoche in 1993, somewhere around there, 1993, 1994. That time Rinpoche was the resident Lama at Tibetan Meditation Center in Frederick, Maryland. And I was starting graduate school. I had met my first Drigong Lama, Gongchik APR Rinpoche, a couple of years before that. Then, when I moved to graduate school, APR Rinpoche said, I think close to your graduate school there is a Drigong Center, there is a Kempo there, you should go there. So that's where I went and I met Khenchen Gongchik Rinpoche. And Khenchen Rinpoche, as many of you know, is completely and thoroughly devoted to the teachings of Kyoba Rinpoche. Everything that Khenchen Rinpoche teaches comes from Kyoba Rinpoche's teachings, and then, of course, ultimately going back to Buddhist teachings. But Khenchen had a way of teaching that he did not particularly say, oh, this is Kyoba Rinpoche's view, this is Kyoba Rinpoche's tradition, because Khenchen Rinpoche can really see how Kyoba Rinpoche's teachings clearly and unmistakably clarify everything that the Buddha taught, or at least everything that is necessary for us. Kyoba Rinpoche made very clear. So for many years, we did not even, or at least I did not hear even the name Gongchik. It was only years of being with Rinpoche that then he started to mention that this important set of teachings of Vajra statements called the Gongchik. At that time, there were no translations of Gongchik into English yet, at least in the early 90s. Then slowly, some translations were made. So here also I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge and to thank, really, all the different translations that I have been fortunate enough to be able to read, and therefore to have access to the Gongchik, since I have no ability to directly look at the text in Tibetan. So the very first translation that circulated around, almost secretly at that point, although it wasn't really secretly, but it felt like, the very first translation that circulated was done by Robert Clark, whom I believe these days live out in California. He had graduated from the religious studies program at the University of Virginia, which is also where I went to school, but he was a number of years ahead of me. I think by the time I got there, he was on his way out. If not, he graduated already. But he had a connection to Drupal Kagyu as well, and then together with one of the Drupans, Drupan Sunam Kunga, Robert Clark came up with a translation together as a commentary by Drupan Sunam Kunga. Drupan Sunam Kunga has since passed away. But it is really through that, that was the first access to this thing called Gongchik. It's just unbelievable at that time to be able to see that immediately, even though understanding very little of it at that point, just to see some of these in English left a very strong impression. Then eventually formally requesting Khenchen Rinpoche to give just the oral transmission, the reading transmission of Gongchik, requesting him to give that, and he very kindly gave that. Then the next translation was a translation of the root text, and this time with a traditional commentary translated as well. And that was done by Marcus Weerbeck in Germany, probably butchering up his last name. But Marcus was part of a group of students who enrolled in the translation school that His Holiness the Drikung Kyabgun Chesang started in Dehradun. So Marcus was one of the people who came up with a translation of the root text and Chodrak's versified commentary, the illuminating the darkness, the lamp illuminating the darkness, and so that was published by Tara Foundation in Germany. I shared with you guys that book. And then, of course, it's like, wow, there is something else. Then at not too long after that, Khenchen Rinpoche taught the Gongchik at Changchupling in Dehradun. And many non-Tibetan speakers also attended those teachings, and as a result, there were translations given. At that time, Terence Barrett, Terry, did a translation of the root text based on, I believe, Nimanangwa. I could be wrong. My memory is a little fuzzy. And so he did one as well of basically the root text to support Rinpoche's teachings at that time. And so that also circulated. Then later, in the context of a volume that Wisdom Publication came out with, which is part of a set of the Library of the Tibetan Classics, edited by Thupten Jinpa. This volume is the volume known as Mahamudra and Related Instructions, which was translated by Peter Allen Roberts, another great translator, especially of Kagyu material, who is a student of Trangul Rinpoche, the great Gama Kagyu Lama. So for that volume, Trangul Rinpoche chose what he felt to be some of the quintessential Kagyu Mahamudra tradition teachings. And Trangul Rinpoche chose the Gongchik as one of the key texts. And so Peter Allen Roberts translated that. And then the most detailed, complete. Oh, then there's another translation, sorry, of course, which is a translation of the root text combined with the modern commentary of the Gongchik, brief commentaries. And these brief commentaries are drawn from the Nimanangwa, as far as I can tell. And this is done by Khenpo Samdup. And so that book was published by his center up in Ohio, Dharma Center. And so there's that translation. Then finally, right almost at the beginning of this pandemic, so this is, the pandemic has been terrible in many, many ways for most human beings. As I mentioned yesterday in our Sang offering gathering, I said, but let's not forget that it also gave other creatures a break, that we human beings used to dominate everything. I'm not underplaying or dismissing the amount of suffering that has been experienced by human beings during this whole pandemic. But we also should recognize that we are not the only ones. And it seems like the other beings are doing well. Yeah. Well, one other thing that came out well is that at the beginning of this pandemic, this amazing work came out. I think 15, 20 years of work by Professor Zobish, who translated this with the help of Khenpo Rangdo. Khenpo Rangdo was the first head of Kagyu College in Dehradun. So Khenpo Rangdo for years have worked with Professor Zobish to translate this, which is the Nimanangwa. And this came out right before the pandemic started. So then when the pandemic started, I wanted an excuse to read through this carefully. So I instigated our study group, and all of you very kindly humored me and stuck around with me for this whole year. When we started, if you remember, we were doing this on every weekday, Monday to Friday, and at one point I thought that I was going to have a heart attack or something. Then we slowed it down to 3 times a week. Then laziness took over. Then it became twice a week. But then now, finally, statement 15 of chapter 7, we looked at on Friday. Technically finished. Today, we start a new cycle, so to say. And this time, you have to continue this cycle in your own capacity. But nonetheless, we will start a new cycle, so to say, as auspiciousness, as Dendrel, as they say, so that we will continue to study, contemplate, and cultivate the teachings that are found in the Gongchik. And we pray that if there any virtue has been created, and of course there is by all of you, that this may be dedicated to the translation of more Gongchik commentaries. And this has been an amazing project. I'm really grateful to Professor Zobish. This is so wonderful on so many levels. Not only does it have the Nimanangwa in here, but he has also summarized key points found in the 2 earliest commentaries of Gongchik, which is the Dorshema and the Rinjangba. And those are extremely helpful And then, of course, his providing of context for many of us in the notes is also invaluable. So Professor Zobish has a Facebook profile. If you could be so kind, I think, to go leave him a message there, I'm sure he would appreciate. And Kempo Gonjo Rangdro also is on Facebook. If you want to leave him a message, I am sure he would appreciate this. So this is all the different contributions to Gongchik that I know of and that I personally have benefited from the very beginning with Robert Clark and Drupal Sonam Kunga. And then, then following that is the translation by Marcus under the guidance of Khenchen Rinpoche, I believe, in that part. And then also the translation by Terry, with the guidance of Khenchen Rinpoche as well, Terence Barrett, the translation by Mark Reege is the translator of Khenpo Samdup's modern commentary and root text. And then Peter Allen Roberts, and then now Professor Zobish. Then very recently there is a translation of the supplementary, the auxiliary chapter, in the context of another collection known as the Essential Teachings of the 8 Practice Lineages of Tibet, which is a collection by one of the Jonangpa masters, 108 teachings, and one of them includes the last auxiliary chapter, the one with the 46 Vajra statements. It's found in this volume, The Treasury of Precious Instructions, this volume in there. And so this is by the late Gyumedorje, a great translator who passed away not too long ago. So that's another one. I've not looked at that translation, just browsed through a little bit. Yeah. So anyway, we started our study of Gongchik together by doing something that was a little unusual, I think, which is that we started by looking at chapter 6 and chapter 1 of Gongchik simultaneously. We were doing a few Vajra statements in chapter 6 and a few Vajra statements in chapter 1. And this is really picking up on a cue provided by Professor Zobish, his mentioning that in one of the earliest versions of the commentary of Gongchik, the order of the chapters is different from the order that we now have come to consider as the standard order. The standard ordering of the chapters of Gongchik, as we now mostly know it, is like the one in the Nimanangwa, which is the 7 chapters are beginning with the vital points of the Dharma wheel, the vital points of dependent origination, the Vinaya Pratimoksha, the training of the Bodhisattvas, the observance of mantra awareness holders, view, practice, and conduct, and then the 7th chapter called the resultant state of Buddhahood. Roman numerals, page 7 on this book. But there is apparently a different way of ordering these chapters, whereby instead of what the vital points of the Dharma wheel being chapter 1, it is the view, practice, and conduct being the first chapter. And so picking up on that cue, it was, I felt, very fruitful for us to look at 6 and 1 together. I don't know if those of you who stayed with this class for the last year remember this, but I found it very helpful, 6 and 1 together. And I think those statements, if I didn't plan it, but I think if I had planned it better, the certain statements go very well with certain other statements from one chapter to the other chapter. So 6 and 1. So again, as I said, for today, for the sake of auspiciousness and to kind of start us on a new cycle, I want to briefly look at chapter 6, statement 1, and what's now chapter 1, statement 1. So beginning first with chapter 6, statement 1. Chapter 6, statement 1. So chapter 6, statement 1 is that statement is translated as he taught that the Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. He here refers to Kyopa Rinpoche. Remember that the Gongchik was compiled by Sherab Jungne, Kyopa Rinpoche's most closest disciple and Dharma heir, main Dharma heir. That Sherab Jungne basically, after the passing of Kyopa Rinpoche, went into retreat. This is a pattern that we see with all the early Kagyu masters. When their master passes away, the student goes into a period of intensive retreat. Kyopa Rinpoche himself did that. Then his Sherab Jungne did that. So when Sherab Jungne was in retreat, that was when he began to compile what I call kind of the one-liners. So these Vajra statements. So remember that these Vajra statements were uttered by Kyopa Rinpoche throughout his life. Whatever Sherab Jungne heard and remembered, he wrote them down. And each of these statements were spoken of in relation to probably what was being discussed. That Kyopa Rinpoche may be chance upon, or hears his disciples debating or discussing, and then Kyopa Rinpoche would illuminate that issue with his statement. So this statement here says, he taught that the Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. And what is this in response to? This is in response to some claim the dharmas that appear without transmission lineage, such as, or things like called earth teachings, space teachings, and treasure teachings to be profound and amazing. Yeah. So the immediate context is 11th, 12th century Tibet. Keeping in mind that Buddhism, according to the records, the tradition, it says came in the 8th century, started to come into Tibet. In part, the Tibetan kings of that time were very interested in having Buddhism established in Tibet. And then the other important part is, of course, there were great teachers who came. So among the most important ones in this early period, 8th century, Bema-Sambhava or Guru Rinpoche, and then others as well. But after an initial period of flourishing, the Dharma, Then the Dharma went into decline in Tibet, in part because a new king apparently was unfriendly to the growth of Buddhism in Tibet. And so then, depending on, there's some debate as to what degree, but this is remembered by later Buddhist sources as a very difficult time for Buddhism, which is under the reign of Dharma. It is said that the Dharma and the institutions for supporting Dharma were suppressed. And that led to over a century of not much Dharma activities. Dharma went underground, so to say, and also the support for Dharma went away because the king no longer supported it. Which is, I think, a footnote to that is, we better not let kings or powerful people be the ones solely responsible for supporting Dharma. Because then when they change their minds or their successors change their minds, then everything is upside down. So anyway, in the 10th, 11th century, there was a starting of a renewal of Buddhism. So there was a lot of excitement. In particular, the arrival of Atisha, one of the key elements in what we call the Kagyu lineage now, is in fact the legacy of Atisha. Because Gampopa himself was a monk in Atisha's tradition. So Atisha's influence is very important to Kagyu lineage. But Atisha's influence is important to all lineages of Tibetan Buddhism, in fact. So anyway, in the 10th century, Atisha arrived. And then with that, it marks the start of a second period of excitement. So many different texts were translated, teachings brought, transmissions arrived. And then other figures like Marpa Lotsawa, Milarepa's teacher, went to Tibet, and he went with another translator, and they came back with more teachings. Then different Tibetans went to Nepal, went to India, different Indians and Nepalis came to Tibet. So there was a lot of excitement. Yeah. So also about the same time, with all this excitement, what we know is that there were also individuals claiming to have transmissions of Buddhist practice, Buddhist lineages, that they say, we got it miraculously. So when asked, so where did you get this practice from? They said, there is no need for lineage. I realized it myself. Yeah. And in some cases, they will say, oh, I found it, hidden in the ground. Or it fell down from the sky. Now, of course, there is a phenomena like this known as dharmas, and tertuns, treasure discoverers. Now, legitimate dharmas and tertuns, no problem. In fact, yes, Guru Rinpoche and his disciples hid these. But then, because of that, there were also a lot of people who say, oh, I also have these hidden things, which is difficult to verify, right? Then even among those who perhaps got real treasures, real dharmas, right? But you can see that there were overemphasis on that and say, this is so amazing. Even more amazing than what is coming from India. So in a way, one way we can read this statement and its context for us. We don't live in the 10th century, 11th century, so we learn whatever we can learn about that time there. Then we also need to apply in our times. In our times, yeah, especially now, there is great respect for things that people thought up, that people pulled out of thin air. We are more impressed by that. Oh, he discovered this. Oh, he, this is something very special, And what comes from the tradition, we're like, that's no longer as good, not so pure, not so amazing. I want something that was just discovered. I want modern Dharma. I want modern Buddhism. That guy is so smart, you know. He thought of all these things, you know. Oh, yes. And then what he thought of is all, of course, you know, very suitable to our times. Oh, and so there's a lot of excitement, you know. Here, Gyoba Rinpoche says, Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. So when we looked at this, we said, yes, we got to be careful that we don't become fundamentalist Buddhists and say, oh, without the lineage, it's bad, it's wrong, you know. That's another extreme. Here, my understanding of this statement is, or some of the implications of this statement is, when Dharma comes to us through a lineage, and for a lineage to be a lineage, is when everyone in that line understands the nature of that relationship, understand the purpose of the lineage, and they are all doing their best, trying their best to embody and to pass on the essence of the teachings. And when these individuals do this, and we are connected to a line of these individuals, then whatever they have tried, all their mistakes, in a way, we do not inherit the mistakes, we learn from their mistakes. And whatever successes that they did gets passed down to us because we are connected to them. It speaks to this wisdom that is being discovered more and more, generation after generation, with more depth, with more nuances. So that in that sense, you know, it's better than something that just fell out of the sky. As magical as something that just fell out of the sky, it's not. It doesn't have this weight of being tested. We need not romanticize the past and say, you know, everything in the past is good, now is bad. And that would be the misunderstanding this statement. This statement is saying that to be connected to a community, lineage is community, but stretching back to the beginning. When we have that kind of connection, we don't have to just try to figure it all out for ourselves, and in our state of confusion, not sure what we figured out is exactly what is meant to be figured out or not. So this is really telling us, don't get carried away by the latest teaching, the latest transmission, the latest excitement. Our gold, we treat like brass. Other people's brass, because it's new, it smells good, it's polished, we think it's gold. Yeah. So here, again, my personal opinion, like, no, Gilbert Rinpoche is not saying, dharmas are fake, not real, not good. He's not talking about that. He's addressing this tendency among us, all of us, We want something new. We want something fresh. We want something exciting. And someone very charismatic, gives a new twist to things. We just like, woohoo! But the Dharma is not for entertainment. Yes, maybe we need skillful means to pull people in. And so we give some excitement. But if real growth and progress is going to happen, it cannot be constantly chasing. For things that fall out of the sky, for things that get dug up from the earth, so to say, for things that came in the vision, came in the dream. Yeah, all those things. They're good, maybe, to sometimes inspire, when our practice gets a little rusty. But there's many of us, that are addicted to just chasing the latest excitement. So Kyupa Rinpoche here says, the Dharma that is transmitted through a lineage is profound and marvelous. So even the Dharma that falls out of the sky, even if it is indeed the authentic Dharma, it doesn't have yet, the test of people engaging it. And so forget about, the problem of like that Dharma is not really Dharma, someone just made it up themselves. Laying even that aside, if you compare the Dharma that comes through a lineage and the Dharma, still Dharma, that just fell out of the sky or just, got dropped into your head, of the two, Kyupa Rinpoche says, the one that comes with the lineage carries a lot of blessings, carries a lot of wisdom. Don't throw that away. Okay, now you say something, Now it's graduation time, so I didn't make a test. But you say something about this,
I think that it has to be with the Vaya statement that talks about the ground, the path, and the result. Because the teachings that you have gave us has, for me, has as a maduration. Since a year that I have followed these teachings, I have changed my comprehension, my absorption.
Yes.
I think that this is that, and I want to agradecer. How do you say to say thank you? For all this year.
Yes, sure. Thank you too. Yes, anybody else? Question, say something. And I think, Ellen, maybe you have a question? In chat, if somebody, I cannot reach my screen that well.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
It seems to me one of the things we learned this last year, which I'm very, very grateful for this whole year, and like having the actual gratitude for the pandemic to have this happen. But it seems to me that we've learned that whatever teaching is presented to us, it's our responsibility to analyze it. Where did it come from? Why does it touch me? Why am I like interested in that teaching? and that it's our duty to figure that out and relate it to our other teachings, because there could be some kind of attraction because it was someone that was really popular, said that, like, oh yeah, it's got to be right. But no, it's our duty relative to what we've learned to analyze any teaching we receive in the context of what we've learned, and actually what's our karma to understand.
Yes. Taking responsibility, for what we learn, taking to heart, and that only we can do for ourselves, because nobody else knows you as well as you do, in the full sense, Yeah, sometimes people give insights into us that we never thought of. We're like, oh, right? But in a complete sense, we know ourselves best. And we have to cultivate this. Yeah. So that is cultivating. That's important.
I have a comment. I'm so glad to have with you guys this year. It has been very difficult to me for many reasons, as we have had many dukkha in our lives. So I know I'm with the right group, because I don't feel the necessity to go to fish someone else's teachings. So when you comment about that, I really don't understand how people go to other places and meet so many people, many teachers, because these teachings are so profound. So if we dedicate to really understand these teachings, we could be studying this for years.
Yes.
So we don't need to know to many things, because all the teachings are has the same purpose. So we don't need to go very far from here.
Right.
So I'm very grateful to have you as a teacher. And I understand that the first time Andres taught it 7 or 8 years ago, when I started to study Buddhism, and he talked about the teacher and the teachings. So I understand the first time. So thank you, Dr. Lai. Happy birthday. I hope you have a long life. You have a very nice life with a clear purpose to help others. And this is very beautiful. And I'm very grateful. And guys, I really feel that I know you, even though we haven't been together. So thank you, Mar. Thank you, Javier. And thank you, all the group of students.
So if I if I try to fulfill your wish, then I have to eat less donuts. I'm pretty good already. I don't go that often. And by the way, if other people are listening, no, I don't like any other donuts. So please don't give me donuts when you see me. Only one.
Well, you're in a good shape now, because I have some pictures of you from 5 or 6 years ago. You were so different.
Yeah, some precious human life, I really learn about how sometimes, we kind of like, we misuse Dharma, Yeah, on the excuse of Dharma, we said, oh, no need to think about the body, no need to worry so much. You just think about the mind, work on the mind. But But we have to see what level we are at, you know. So I learned that lesson. Yeah? I'm at a level where the body and what happens to the body still affects me very quickly. Affects the mind very quickly. Yeah? So then, for those of us who are still tethered to the body so much, then really got to take care of the body for the sake of the mind, and for the sake of the mind maturing in the Dharma. So thank you anyway. Can someone be Christina and help read what's in the chat? Because my computer is far. I cannot actually reach.
There was a question in the chat but was answered. What's the name of the Kempo? I think Sister Kim from Singapore answer is Kempo Rangdol.
Yeah, Kempo Rangdol. 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 Kempo Rangdol.
Mama, happy birthday.
Oi! Oh, speak again.
Happy birthday, Lama.
Oh. Okay.
I on you.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday to you. Can everyone turn on your microphone?
Happy
birthday
birthday
to
to you.
you.
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
dear
Hannah.
Dr. Lai.
Happy
Happy birthday
birthday
to
to
you.
Birthday to you.
Ah, Ellen, thank you. I was wondering why. How come Ellen is in class today? During the pandemic, another really great thing about the pandemic, you know, we already know all the bad things about the pandemic, so maybe no need to talk about that. But one of the great things about the pandemic too is like, you know, like we can offer cake and then eat it ourselves. Then the one receiving cake, you know, also don't have the danger of diabetes. So wonderful solution for everyone. You know, the person you offer to is kept healthy because they cannot get the cake, you know. And then the person who offer gets to enjoy the cake also, you know. It's like win-win for everyone. But Ellen knows, you know, I'm coming to Indonesia to eat, so...
You are going to have a surprise, Dr. Lai.
Sorry?
You are going to have a surprise.
Oh, more surprise.
Yes. So don't think you are not going to eat cake.
Okay. Anyway, here. Now, we need to look at chapter 1, statement 1. Yeah. So now, if statement 1 in chapter 6 is telling us the importance of lineage, the importance of being connected, the importance of not just, you know, chasing after this excitement, that excitement, right? And so chapter 6 really wants us to stay focused. Yeah. Now, chapter 1, statement 1 reminds us to be spacious. One of the implications of chapter 1, statement 1 is to remind us to be spacious. So what is that statement? All the teachings of the Buddha reveal the original state of the fundamental nature. Now, there are a few important points here, but related to chapter 6, statement 1, which emphasizes focus, right? Being connected to a lineage. Here it's saying, related to that statement, for me, this statement is also saying, but what the Buddha showed us, what the Buddha taught, what we call Buddha Dharma, doesn't belong to anyone, much less a particular teacher or a particular teacher. a particular lineage even. What the Buddha pointed to is the nature and the appearance of all things. And in that understanding, if you know how to pay attention, if you know how to learn, Dharma is everywhere. Because the Buddhas have already revealed this original nature, this fundamental nature. A commentary on this statement basically also divided into two parts, which is Buddha taught not only the way things are, which is emptiness, lack of substantiality, lack of inherent existence, but Buddha also taught cause and effect, how things come down. How things come about. Right? Remember, we looked at this. We looked at this very closely. Let me go find. Yeah, we attempted some discussion, and then we didn't really continue. So it's this statement is the Chokun Shisam Babki Neluk Den. Shisam Babki Neluk Den. So she is the essence, the nature. Some is an. Bab is kind of coming down. So Shisam Babki Neluk. Neluk is like the mode of abiding, literally, right? Neluk is also sometimes basic state or the fact, things as they are, the way things are. Neluk, depending on context, you can translate into English differently. Chokun is all dharmas, all phenomena. She is the basic, innate, or natural disposition. Pap is descend, come down, flow down. So by extension, we said, how things play out. So how things play out, how samsara nirvana plays out, it's according to the unmistaken working of cause and effect. Apple seed produces apple tree. Mango seed, mango tree. It cannot be. The apple seed produce orange. Orange seed produce mango. No. So the Buddhists have taught, have shown, has demonstrated clearly the way things are, both in terms of the way they abide, which is emptiness, and the way they manifest, which is according to cause and effect. So that's the second main point. This point is the point without necessarily taking 6-1 into consideration. But if you take 6-1 and 1-1, then for me, 6-1 is the need to stay focused. Even the staying focused, don't force it. You have to develop, as Cecile expressed it. Over time, you have to develop and kind of gain certainty, right, with a particular Dharma tradition that works for you. Then don't go chasing. You appreciate and you see the profundity of what comes to us through a community, through a lineage. Focus. 1-1 also tells us, actually, the Dharma doesn't belong to anyone. So in that sense, we don't say, oh, this is Jigten Sumgun's teachings. And that's why Khenchen Rinpoche doesn't like to say it that way. He says, no, it doesn't belong to him. He clarified what Buddha taught. And what Buddha taught doesn't belong to the Buddha. So also, Buddha Dharma, the superficial translation of Buddha Dharma is the Dharma taught by Buddha, as if the Dharma belongs to Buddha. But a more profound understanding of the phrase Buddha Dharma is the Dharma that turns us into Buddha. The path, the method, the teachings that Buddhacize us, that makes us Buddha, that awakens us. So Buddha Dharma is the teachings that awaken us. So that which can awaken us, all the Buddhas have taught, and they are the way things are. And so that gives a real spaciousness. In that sense, we don't have to argue and fight. And in this early Kagyupa tradition, philosophy is secondary. Philosophy might be a good tool to have, especially if you're a teacher and you're dealing with students with all different, levels and dispositions and interests. Then knowing philosophy is good. Knowing psychology is good. Maybe even knowing politics, knowing economics, knowing social theory, all those things. It's good. But always have to remember what is the root and what are the branches. The root is always to use these teachings to transform our own minds, to change ourselves. That's the root. The branches is all the other kinds of information that we could gain. So the root of what we need to know is how things are and how they come to be, how they manifest. That's 1-1. So, your comments regarding 1-1. Anybody wants to say something?
I just want to comment about the beauty of it. I mean, it is just so profoundly beautiful, and just, it just makes everything make sense.
Thank you. Yes, I feel like that, like these teachings is just like, Laura usually keeps a vow of silence in Asheville, but Cusco, in Cusco, she speaks.
Because usually I only have something dumb to say.
I also think that the beauty of this particular teaching and of the Drigon Kagyu lineage is it's basically saying the same thing in many different ways. And if you don't get it one way, you may get it another way. And so each time you hear something expressed in a different fashion, it sort of begins to clarify whatever idea we have, and it can expand in a way that, because I've heard you say the same thing 1,000 times, 1,001, it hits somehow. And so it's an accumulation, I suppose. My cat's making a comment. But it's an accumulation that when you're dealing with the lineage, and you're dealing with a lineage that understands this 1-1, it takes time, but it grows.
Yes, yes, yeah. Yeah, so the title of this text is the single, the unified, Gongchik Gongchik, the single, the unified. So it's single in the sense that when you distill it, it is 1 point. But when you unravel it, it's 84,000 dharmas. Yes.
I would like to say that this year haven't been easy. Sometimes it was difficult because I don't know, difficult to wake up and attend the class and practice, and sometimes easy. But at the end, I think we have a commitment with this precious human life, with the Dharma, with our lamas, and with the people around us, because, as you say, is our mandala. And also, when we begin to study the Gongchik, it's not too easy to understand, but now I can see that all the teachings, if we don't understand, like take home lesson, is only a rotten words and rotten letters.
Yes.
And also I want to thank all of you, thank you, Lord Dorje Lopon, for your patience, for your commitment, for all your teachings, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Also very fortunate, and you might think I have planned this all along, but it's none of these things are planned really. I mean, there's some plan to say, okay, yeah, we'll have class or whatever, right? And personally, kind of selfishly, I feel, very meaningful for me that we ended today, my birthday, according to the calendar, it says. And so I think for me, meaningful that, accidentally, so to say, accidentally we say, it ended today. So personally, it's very meaningful. And of course, again, I thank all of you more so for attending all these teachings with me. Then holds me responsible to read this whole book. And of course, then all the things last few days that you all were doing from afar, from near, and surprises and surprise to come, apparently, everything, of course I appreciate all of that, but really, like your commitment to studying the Dharma and to embody these teachings, will help me to remind me to keep the same kind of commitment. And yes, from the last few classes, I think so wonderful, those statements, it's like, this is our Buddha field. There's no other Buddha field to go to. This is our Buddha field. Buddhas don't go anywhere else. Buddhas cannot be found in anywhere else except for in the mind streams of sentient beings. And I think it's important to remember, not just in my mind stream, but in the mind streams of all sentient beings. You want to look for Buddha. If you can't find them in your own mind stream, look for them in someone else's mind stream, because they are also there. And when you find them in someone else's mind stream, then in finding that, it might illuminate the Buddhas that are in your own mind stream, because Buddhists don't abide anywhere else except for in the mind streams of sentient beings, within sentient beings. And that's, that was such a wonderful final statement in the Gongchik. It says, there is nothing as unhelpful and wrong as to think, Buddhas are these sublime beings, on thrones and fancy this or that or whatever we think, and that sentient beings are these miserable things, bumping into each other. And it says, that's the commentary reminds us, that is not helpful. So we have to relinquish that view and we practice pure perception. Cultivate. Again, practice sometimes losing its, oomph. Cultivate. Grow. Yeah, so again.
I want to share if there is not else to say, I want to share with you a surprise that we have.
Uh-oh.
Let me share my screen.
Ah, good.
Can you see?
Mm-hmm. The Gongchik.
Yes.
I've been there 4 times, 5 times.
Let me. Okay.
Very sharp image.
that's it. Happy birthday. You're muted.
Thank you, and I'm glad I've given you all some excuse to practice more Dharma and to accumulate mantras. And I dedicate all of that, especially to the good health and longevity of my teachers, who are also your teachers. And I dedicate them, of course, on a personal level to my parents. May they be healthy, and may their life be stable. And then may all of us have healthy, stable lives, and may we have good deaths. Birthday, we don't think we should talk about, but really, right, we are practitioners, so we also want good deaths as well as a good life. So we'll do dedication prayers, yeah, unless somebody else has something to say. No? Okay, good. Then we'll do the Amitabha aspiration prayer. Even though we know there is no place to go and no place to come from, that this is the Buddha field and this is where the Buddhas are. Nonetheless, we dedicate for all beings achieving the Pure Land of Amitabha, especially all the humans that have perished due to this ripening of this karma that comes in the form of the pandemic. Directly or indirectly, many people have lost their lives. So we dedicate to them, and to those who have survived them, we pray for them to not suffer this much of losing someone that they care about so much. But in the bigger picture, that which is born has to die. What we cannot improve but can merely maintain is the body. But what we can improve, even as the body loses its ability to be maintained anymore, is the heart, is the mind. And so that's good news. That's such a wonderful thing to not forget. So I'm not talking about the mind, becoming like you can continue to remember everything sharp, everything wonderful, if you can have that. But the more important mind is not that. The more important mind is the bodhicitta mind. And so even if, some of us as we grow older, we find that we cannot remember things, we are taking a longer time to remember someone's name, those are secondary. It's bodhicitta that we can magnify. So first the Amitabha aspiration, then the bodhicitta dedication. Sanje nangwa taye dang Yesu jobo tuje chenpo na yondu senpa tuje to namla sanje changsen pa me korgi kur degi ngosa padu me paye dewa chense shawe shinkam der dasen dine se bo gyurmata Kewa senje bama jobaru deru kene nante shato shode ke dage monlam tapadi choju sanje changsen tamje ki geme drupa jinje lamdu so tayata panchagriya awa bodhanaya soha Changju semjo rinpoche Magye banam ge gyurche Ge banyam pa me boya gong ne gong du be wor sho. So see you guys and those of you who are involved in DDIS this Wednesday night. Otherwise, this next 2 Saturdays in the morning, Khenchen Rinpoche asked me to do 2 classes on summarizing chapter 8 of Bodhicharyavatara, which is on the chapter on meditative concentration, meditative equipoise. And there are basically 2 points. One is turning away from the attachments that we habitually get stuck in samsara, and then turning towards bodhicitta. So 2 Saturdays. And then we start Bodhicharyavatara for those of you who want to participate in that. And Bodhicharyavatara will start on the eve of Sakadawa, May the 11th, which is Sakadawa already in Asia at that point. Again, very, I feel, without really planning for it, auspiciously, it's happening on that date. So I want to thank also those of you who, from time to time, regular basis, every now and then, have sent offerings to me. This is very helpful because, as you know, I don't do any of these programs by saying this is how much this and that, and also not to like like I hope not to like make a big deal of anything, but I want you to know that today I send offerings to my teachers, and so part of what you offer, will go to them. And one final news auspicious, the More Curry, Less Worry project will continue another 3 months. At this point, I don't know. Javier, if you are there, I don't know where we are now, but the latest news is I got a contribution from Canada. Lee and her friends and family have sent enough for 3 extra months of the More Curry, Less Worry project. So we are going to be able to continue that. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cumpleaños.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank
Feliz
you.
cumpleaños. Thank you
See
so
everyone
much.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias.
you.
Thank
Ciao
you
for
to
now.
everyone over
Bye.
there.
Thank you. Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
Thank you.
Birthday.
Feliz cumpleaños, Dr. Lai. Vida
Thank
larga.
you. Gracias.
Sí, gracias